Hello, everyone. My name is Ievgen, but you can call me Eugene. It's easier a little bit. So I work for a company called CLUC, and I'm here today to share a little bit of our infrastructure story at the company. Oh yeah, so perfect. Ah, no. Nice. Yeah, works. So I work in web development since 2007. That's a lot of years. Back then, I was doing mostly web design. I don't even know if these days you have the web design as a phrase, even like it's just designers. But back then, I was designing using some pretty wild tools like. Just CSS, HTML, fighting with Internet Explorer 6. It was fun, or not so fun times, depends. But I worked at many places, like startups, consultancies, and eventually, I think in roughly 2016, I joined a company, a government-backed company in Ukraine that was doing this huge service, like a medical API for all of Ukraine, like medical service providers. It was a big application. This still is. It works perfectly fine. We were doing like this, just the backend, like this huge thing. And this was the first time that I got exposed to Elixir and Kubernetes. It was also open source to some point. I think they closed it, not sure why, but I think it's still possible to find something on GitHub, like what Ukrainian medical stuff, what kind of code goes into supporting that. So it is quite a big of a project. Like in the first weeks of releasing it to production, we have millions of customers because ultimately you want the entire population of Ukraine to sign up for this and to do all your like stuff through like this API. Eventually, I moved on and I joined a company called CLUC, which is a product that we're building. It helps you manage your documents and also get insights from your documents and like a lot of other things. Yeah. So I joined CLUC in 2018, roughly 5 years ago. It was 1st of June, I remember that day. It was Friday. At that time, CLUC used Heroku. Beautiful, nice service. It's great. I don't have any better words to say. Like it's really decent, and we were very simple at the time. So we had an API. We still have it, and we had a file service and a front end. And I don't think we had anything else back then. Super simple, all deployed in like 3 dynos. Pretty nice. The main API is written in Elixir programming language. I encourage every single one of you to check it out. It's an open source, completely an open source project. You can go on GitHub. It has a beautiful community. There's a forum where all the cool kids hang out. Like if you don't know where to start, just go to forum. They have a chat. Like it's also like the discourse forum. Like it's super nice. Yeah, you can find people there to talk to, and they're great, and they will help you. And like Elixir is just super nice language with a lot of great properties from Erlang. And Erlang is created by Ericsson, and Ericsson is installed its software on all the like the 4G stations. Like it's super reliable, very nice, also functional and some other things. But roughly, I think 1 week into me being part of the company, we have on Slack we have this like a co-founder of ours. He comes in and says, you know what, we have a client, pretty important client. He tries to upload the file, and the file, for some reason, times out. So then he says a crucial thing. He says, if you will be able to fix this, lunch is on me. By the way, I don't think I got that lunch. I need to talk to him. So, sure, it's a typical day. We look at, again, at our infrastructure and try to understand like what's going on. And this is what's going on. So the front end, our front end application attempts to upload a file. and it uploads the file, and for some reason it times out. So back in the day, we made certain architectural decisions, and I can't say it's exactly bad thing to do. There are many reasons to do it like that, but like we were trying to process the file, so the customer would upload a 300 pages PDF, and we would try to process all 300 pages online right here, which is unthinkable. Like, but also if you try to think, okay, let's do it some other way, maybe better. There are so many things that you need to accommodate for, like how to return the error synchronously to the client and so on and whatnot. So it's implemented like that. Clients like that don't come super often with like huge files like that. So this is fine, kind of, but we need to fix it because this is an important client. So we looked really quickly at the documentation, and this is the kind of infamous 30 seconds limit that Heroku imposes on you and says any HTTP request has to complete within 30 seconds. And most, and like 99% of requests in the world probably complete within, but like ours didn't. So we scratched our heads a little bit, started to look around like what we can do to just like help this file get through. I think at the time there were some ideas like, can we even like take a file and process it locally and just upload it on the server? So now we took a look at what Heroku had to offer. I don't exactly remember the reasons why we decided not to go with what Heroku had to offer here. I think we tried a few options, and the file would still time out because the processing underneath was really complicated. You have to split it into pages and do some processing on each page. So, but we want that lunch, or that dinner rather, right? So we need to fix this. So what do? A very simple thing. We just deploy it in Kubernetes, that one service, the file service. And the file gets through, so all good, perfect. So at this point you might look at this and like, what? Is that easy? Is that it? Like this guy has like 20 more minutes to talk. Was that the thing? No, it wasn't. So it turns out that before, like a week before I joined Contract Book, I was given access to company, like I was given like a company email. And by the virtue of us using Google what's it called? Workspace, I think. Yeah, I had access to my corporate email, and I had access to company like cloud account, which was completely empty at the time. And I remember I was sitting at another conference, and I just had some time, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll just create a Kubernetes cluster because I had experience with Kubernetes from the previous, the big API that we were building in Ukraine. And maybe I can just create a toy, like a sandbox cluster, because why not? God knows what's coming towards your way, right? So we had a cluster running. It was not a production cluster in any sense, but it was there. So we deployed this one service. It was containerized for development purposes. We changed a little bit the Docker file, I think, deployed it, and it worked. So it managed to process the file because also I think, like the timeouts were different in Google, so it went just fine. But also the great thing was that we had all these free things to try, so I wasn't worried too much that I'm gonna waste company resources, several thousands of dollars or anything like that. You can see that's like Google has this to offer. But the funniest thing here, maybe funny, maybe disturbing, that we would not actually migrate to Google Cloud for 3 more years. Like over 3 years, we would stay on Heroku. This is insane. I gotta say, like we would move towards Google Cloud. Some services we would create buckets, we would move this and that. But to fully migrate, it would take us 3 years. It's not that scary, and I'm gonna tell you why. So we're still in Heroku. So what's going on? Heroku is great. There are a lot of good parts to it. If you're building a business, if you're just starting, if you don't have expertise in things like Kubernetes is a really complicated piece of software. Like if you're looking at it from the side, if you're working with it for a few years, then it becomes clear like what principles it's built on, and it's not that scary anymore. But if you don't have time, you just use Heroku, it's fine, it's great. It had a lot of good features for us. Until like the time went by, and we started to notice some things. Some of those things, I think one of the bigger, now it's going to be, so one of the bigger things is just like weird security defaults that we encountered. For example, and this is a like extreme thing, but in Heroku by default, on a plan that we had been running on, you have like IP address of you have the connection string to production that you can share on Slack, send it to your friend, and he'll be able to connect to it. The production, this is like, it shouldn't be like that. It should be way harder to connect to production system, but no, like this is what was there. Also, we wanted to, like when you want to debug something in production, typically what we would do, you connect to a production node, console, run some commands, check the database was not from, as if you're like inside the application. It's not really possible with Heroku. Like you can kind of work around that, but it's really like a not nice workaround. But there were an ugly part to this, I think, which is it was becoming a little bit uglier, specifically around features that can be considered, I think, enterprisey. So you can buy enterprise plan on Heroku, but it's also super pricey, and we didn't want that. So interesting thing that comes here is that the company grows. We're not standing in one place. The company grows, and we keep getting more customers, and more customers, more demands from customers. So some customers come up with this. So this, I don't know if many people recognize this. It's just an example, by the way. It's not a real thing. But this is a self-assessment security questionnaire. So some companies will tell you, well, we know you're in the cloud, we know you're secure, we know your cloud is probably like SOC 2 compliant, but are you doing all the security things according to how we want you to do them? And like to really be able to answer that question, there is this questionnaire. It's crazy. It's not that crazy. It can get even crazier. There are questionnaires where there are just hundreds of questions, and you want to take a look at your infrastructure, take a look at the questionnaire, and try to connect the dots. Like, oh my God, like, do I have those logs? Do I have those like permissions? Do I have the VPC? Do I have this or that? It's really draining. So I'm gonna give you like a first takeaway here. Do not open files like that before lunch. It will ruin your lunch. It will ruin your day. Maybe do not open files like this on Mondays because it will ruin your week. You don't want that. You don't want to sit. You want to write some code. You want to enjoy life, right? And this is not. There's no joy in this at all. So what you want to have, on the other hand, is you want to pick a standard, and like a security standard, and be compliant to that standard. So the next time the customer comes to you and asks you, can you fill this questionnaire? You say, no, I can't, because I'm compliant with SOC 2. So obviously there will be customers who still want you to, well, some bigger ones maybe, who still have those questionnaires, but suddenly if you find a way to be compliant with SOC 2, which is a standardized set of questions, you can do it once, you can put some automations in place to make sure that you are always continuously compliant. Great, you can just send them the report. Like, okay, this comes also with an audit, you have to pass an external audit, but like when you pass the audit and you are certified, you just can send them the document on demand to the customers. At this point, I think we kind of, as we were getting more and more of those, there were a lot of discussions internally. We will have this nice thing once we migrate to Google. We will have that nice thing once we migrate to Google. So we kind of sat down like, okay, maybe we can do something about this. And this is maybe closer to the third year of that initial 3 years estimation. So we kind of looked at what good stuff we have at Heroku, how that will map on what we will have on Google. And turns out that a lot of things Google gives you, just because it has such a huge amount of services, It has some of the basic building blocks like identity management that you don't have to pay for. It's just table, you assign emails to roles and permissions, it's just there. Or for example, you have the audit logs, so anything that happens in your cluster, in your application, like in changing of anything within the realm of your Google project, everything is being recorded, so you can really find that developer who accidentally changed some environment variable somewhere. You can do that. It's possible out of the box. So we looked at this, and we kind of like started to, I mean, also this is a summary and a bit of an oversimplified. And when you're working on this, it's not necessarily that you're like there's full clarity and you know what you're doing. It's a little bit of a chaos, a little bit of a planning, a little bit of we want this or we want that. So this is a kind of like in hindsight, how I can now look back. So it can be categorized. So we needed to do the work to transition from 1 to 2. And this work can be categorized of sorts. So first of all, we needed to configure a lot of things in Google. Second, we needed to teach our developers and work with developers. And at the time, we had a lot of developers who developed habits working with Heroku. So why do we want to move in Google Cloud? And I only have 10 minutes, and this is going to be a disaster. But why do you need to Google Cloud if Heroku kind of works? Yeah, not really. So you need to teach, work with developers and figure out how to transition them from A to B. And then there is a lot. So Heroku gives you a lot out of the box, like pipelines, review apps. You can review apps like when you have a code in a branch and you want to deploy just that code separately and test it without merging. Very nice feature. So we started slowly answering, working in each of these 3 categories and see what we can do. So the first one is we decided, we happen to have some experience with Terraform, not much, but still. We will describe all of our infrastructure, including queues, databases, Kubernetes, Cloudflare DNS names, everything in Terraform. Terraform, really good stuff. If anyone doesn't use it for some reason, I encourage you at least to try to check the website. It's nice. We didn't have, because we didn't have a lot of experience, we didn't know what are the best practices, what do we put in these files, how do we name them, what do we do? So we just did the dumbest thing. We just, intuitively, I think it goes there. We'll refactor it later when the time comes if someone have a better idea, sure. So we slowly grew our staging and transitioned our staging completely to be already in Terraform. So I have to also say here that we were changing in the process also CI/CD so that it's smooth, so people still can work, still can use Heroku, but in the meantime, we're also deploying this already to Kubernetes. So I'm gonna speed up a little bit. We eventually just copied what we did for staging to production, changed some values, and created a whole production environment. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of experience, so it doesn't matter. Don't waste a lot of time in the beginning. Who cares? You will rewrite it later. So the next thing is we needed to know what to write in those Terraform files. So we needed to learn a bit more about Google Cloud. And we did start, but Google Cloud is vast. It's extremely intimidating if you look at it for the first time. So I will give you some clues. I will use the storage, the S3, an analog of in Google. So there are, pay attention to several things. First of all, there is always, any product in Google has this page with identity management rules and description. It would be nice to have this bookmarked. Next, any product in Google Cloud has an API. You want to know not the tutorials and stuff, but like the API as well, because you will be calling that API very frequently, maybe using curl even. And then there is always any product. There is always a page where every product has this like release notes. So you want to also like be on top of what's going on. Of course, there is bug tracker, which is insane. Like it's extremely, like it's just thousands and thousands of issues. It's all in the open. They don't, yeah. So it's intimidating on the first try, but when you start narrowing down your search, it's going to be much better. It's a screenshot, but like if you narrow down your search with some keywords, it's going to be like way easier. The next thing is we need to educate our developers. So we created this, again, one file, we called it just facts, like facts about the Google Cloud. So we moved into this file as much as we can, like how do you view logs? How do you restart the application? How do you this? How do you that? And it paid off. Eventually in Slack, developers started asking questions and exchanging links even themselves to this file. The last big thing in this whole story is the CI/CD. So CI/CD is kind of like a glue between developers and operations people. It helped us, so instead of explaining to people how to run certain scripts, what to pass, what params to pass, we decided, okay, we will do it a bit differently. We will use GitHub. We will use the fact that GitHub has this like workflows, and some of them you can just start from like using the UI, and it paid off. Developers are using it super actively right now. They're creating review apps, and it's just nice. One thing I will, two things about CI/CD that I will say. You want to interact with Google Cloud a lot, so you typically all the documentation everywhere they will say, install this gcloud tool. Yeah, that's nice. A lot of them omit the fact that there is an auth2l, which is another tool maintained by Google, which is like a curl, like a very small one that allows you to issue, like to fetch a token and then issue requests with that token from your terminal. So you don't have to run around. Like in Google Cloud, you don't have to run around the documentation to figure out how to authorize this and that. No, you can like really do the requests really fast from your computer using this tool. We did some optimization, by the way, in the CI at some point where it helped us like throw away gcloud and have just the tool, and it was much faster because the tool is like a few megabytes, and the whole gcloud tool is like several hundred megabytes. I'm gonna speed run this one very quickly, but you don't want to store your credentials in CI/CD. There's this extremely nice mechanism by Google where you can configure your to have a service account inside Google, like inside GitHub repository that will let you essentially issue requests without. This is the above is the setup, the below is the usage. This is the entirety. There are no secrets here, nothing. As long as you set this up, you don't have to have this like JSON environment variable or whatnot. So yeah, as I mentioned, we duplicated everything in a way that it's being deployed both on Heroku still and on Google Cloud. We did a lot of experimentation. I will not go, maybe in the hallway track I can also share some of the interesting experiments like traffic mirroring we tried. Then we did some rehearsal of database restoration and backup. We scheduled 3 hours of maintenance, I think, that night. And we speedrun the whole migration in only 1 hour. We had to stop the previous database, restore it on the new premises, and then on Google Cloud. And then we spent, I think, an hour or maybe an hour and a half fighting an issue with RabbitMQ because for some reason didn't want to connect to the application because some port was closed. In essence, that evening looked like that. We migrated to the right. This is Bartek, my colleague. Like we had a checklist, what are we going to do? And to the left, this is actually the announcement, like when we did it. There is, Just give it as an example, there is a video, maybe I will show slides later, or you can Google for it, like guys from GitLab, they were doing a huge database migration, and they managed to kind of record everything, so you can see they actually use Ansible and how they do at their scale this kind of migration. Super nice. I will skip a few slides. Straight to the final two takeaways. So first of all, you need a great team, because there will be a lot of hurdles, there will be a lot of uncertainties, a lot of failures, and you want the kind of people working on this who get along really well between each other. And the team cannot be constituted from one person. It has to be two or more, because levels of stress when you're migrating production database is a bit high, and you don't want to make a mistake when doing something like that. Mistakes will happen. That's the second takeaway. Don't worry, first of all, that's fine. Typically, I think the fear of making a mistake can make you prevent doing an action. You don't want to sit. Yeah, you want to still do something. And I will say there is a beautiful talk online from co-founder of Stack Overflow, Jeff Atwood, coding horror on everywhere. He says that failure is an option, and he argues it very nicely using examples from the product, the discourse that they made. I think I'm 20 seconds above. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Hi. Just a quick one. In the beginning, you mentioned that the project was pretty simple, just one simple Elixir API with some front end and the database. Why did it took 3 years to move, since you mentioned it's already been containerized? Like, could you just ship it and?
Technically, yes. It's maybe a few days of work. Technically, we could do that. The thing is that it's still early days in the company's history, and we're busy all the time with feature building. And my role was backend developer still at the time in the company, so it is hard to convey to management that you need to do this kind of migration, because everything works in the moment. Why do just because I can? It's possible. I think, we had a different mindset at the time, so we're like, if it works, it works. Great, we can do it anytime if really needed be.
So did you hit the wall after 3 years and had to migrate, or you just decided it was time to do it now, before we hit the wall?
So I think a bunch of issues accumulated, essentially. It wasn't one big thing. I think the more or less bigger component to this migration was that we wanted to have more control of our infrastructure and to satisfy the security requirements. And actually, not just to satisfy the security requirements, some of them we wanted to do. So this was I think, the moment where we and management aligned better on why we need to do the migration, and everyone were more or less like, yeah, it's a good idea, let's do it. Why not? Let's now schedule this and work on it. More questions? I don't know if we have time. There's probably not so much, so either catch me in the hallway track. Don't be shy. Was? All good? Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.